All right, so inflation is obviously one of the main issues that has been on the minds of the American people recently, and it's kind of important to talk about this and what the potential main driving forces behind it may actually be, because if we don't talk about it, then all of that space and void is going to be taken up by disingenuous, corrupt actors basically in this conversation, like Joe Manchin, for example, who is using inflation to argue against the entirety of the Build Back Better social spending plan. So it's kind of important to understand what is actually causing inflation. And the one thing that I can confidently say, even though inflation is a very complex thing that has multiple factors and variables that go into it, and each industry that we're going to be talking about is different, but with that all being said, one of the things that is not driving inflation is too much stimulus to working class Americans. Okay, something that is not driving inflation would be lowering prescription drug prices or paid family leave, etc., all of the things that have been gutted from that bill. So what are some of the potential causes of the inflation drive that we have been seeing recently? Well, I have an interesting theory here on one of the main industries, or one of the main sectors that we have seen a rise in costs, and that is gasoline. Okay, so this is something that pretty much every American feels, everyone that drives a gas-powered car at least. And so I got an interesting theory here from Brian Grimm and Ken Klippenstein of the Intercept back at it again with some great reporting here, and they say one of the main factors behind the rise in gas prices that we have been seeing around the United States may be this murderous motherfucker right here, MBS, Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia. So if you don't know, basically the rundown here, and we're going to get into some of the specific details, but this is the de facto leader of Saudi Arabia, okay? And this guy is part of an oil cartel that's called OPEC, and basically they control a lot of the world's oil reserves. And so whether or not they decide to turn the tap for oil on or off in the global market has a great degree of influence in terms of what the prices we are going to be feeling here if we are participating in that same market, okay? And so that is why he has so much power and control in this moment, and maybe a reason why he is exercising that control in the way that he is right now to hurt Joe Biden in the United States for some of the recent drama, let's say, that's been going on between the United States and Saudi Arabia. So let's go ahead and read some of the details here. Well, they say the main driver of inflation is a murderous maniac in Riyadh. So he says Saudi Arabia is withholding oil production because Biden won't meet with Mohammed bin Salman after the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, the president suggested. And just a remander, the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, he was a journalist who worked for the Washington Post, and MBS basically had him dismembered and murdered for critical reporting on Saudi Arabia. So let's go ahead and continue with some of the details here. So Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is enacting revenge on Democrats in general and President Joe Biden specifically for the party's increasingly standoffish attitude toward the kingdom by driving up energy prices and fueling global inflation. And Biden himself seemed to allude to this at a town hall event with CNN last month, during which he attributed high gas prices to a certain foreign policy initiative of his, adding that, quote, "There's a lot of Middle Eastern folks who want to talk with me. I'm not sure if I'm going to talk to them." And Biden was making a not so veiled reference to his refusal to meet with Salman and acknowledge him as Saudi Arabia's de facto ruler due to his role in the grisly murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi in October of 2018. And the move came after Biden vowed during a debate with President Donald Trump to make MBS, as he is known, a pariah, and represented a stark departure from Trump's warm relations with the Desert Kingdom and the Crown Prince. So they're about to get into some of the distinctions between Biden and Trump and how aggressively pro MBS Trump was during his administration. But Biden, okay, by the way, is he's not somebody who has made MBS a pariah. He has been relatively more standoffish, but he has not aggressively condemned him for this. He has not enacted sanctions. He has not actually targeted them, and he has not even stopped the weapons flow from the United States in our weapons sales to Saudi Arabia, as they're continuing to manufacture one of the worst, if not the single worst, human crises basically that is going on the planet right now in Yemen, okay, where hundreds of thousands of children are at risk of starving to death. And so Joe Biden is not taking like a firm stance against MBS, but still, relative to Trump, you'll see the difference here. So they say in 2017, Trump broke with tradition by choosing Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia, for his first foreign visit, and soon announced a record arms sale to the kingdom. And later, after Khashoggi, a contributor to the Washington Post, was brutally dismembered in a Turkish consulate, Trump cast doubt on MBS's involvement, saying, maybe he did, maybe he didn't, classic Trump there. And after his own CIA director briefed Congress on Salman's culpability, Trump reportedly repeatedly boasted about his efforts to protect the crown prince, saying, "I saved his ass." And since then, a senior advisor to Trump's campaign, Tom Barak, has been indicted for allegedly working as an unregistered agent of the UAE, Saudi Arabia's closest ally. And they continue here saying that in June 2018, heading into the midterms, Trump requested that Saudi Arabia and its cartel, OPEC, lower energy prices by increasing output, and the kingdom complied, and prices bottomed out in 2020 amid the COVID pandemic, and usage sank to record lows. Also, that's just a result of the pandemic. People were driving less, but prices surged once the pandemic waned and the economies reopened, and Biden in August 2021 requested that OPEC again increase output. But the difference here is that this time, MBS refused, angry at having yet to be granted an audience with Biden and contemptuous of the U.S. pullback from the war in Yemen. And as one of his first pieces of business, Biden had ordered the end of American support for Saudi Arabia and the UAE's war, though it caveated it by barring only the backing of offensive operations. Saudi Arabia nevertheless received it as a grievous blow. So I want you guys to understand, okay, when they said that they are only going to be exporting weapons for, or they are going to block weapons exports for offensive operations from Saudi Arabia, that's complete bullshit, okay? This is the same exact thing as we talk about this concept all the time on this channel with the United States giving military support to Israel, okay? Israel frequently, they say, oh, well, we're just simply defending ourselves from those scary terrorists in Palestine, whether it's in the West Bank or Gaza, and so therefore we should have free reign to blow up hospitals and journalist buildings and refugee camps, etc. They do this all the time, okay? It doesn't really matter what they're calling offensive operations, okay? That's barely a distinction, if it can be called a distinction at all. So Biden, again, has not even been that tough on Saudi Arabia, and in fact, he has been trying to shove through another $650 million arms sale to Saudi Arabia in recent days, and Ilhan Omar had something to say about that. She said, "I agree, selling weapons to Saudi Arabia while they continue to slaughter Yemenis is unacceptable. If we truly believe in putting human rights at the center of our foreign policy, we would not be arming human rights abusers," and she is working on legislation to stop this sale this week, and I'm obviously in full support of that, although, war and funding of terrible human rights abusers is a bipartisan issue here in the United States, so, not too confident that will be blocked, but we'll have to see on that. And they continue here saying that the arms sale underscores Biden's Saudi dilemma, as MBS doesn't just want arms, he wants a thank you without a word of dissent from any Democrat. And Trita Parsi, executive vice president of the Quincy Institute and a critic of Saudi Arabia, said the move by MBS is aimed at boosting Republicans, whom the Crown Prince sees as a more reliable ally. And quote, "As I see it, it is part of a broader Saudi strategy to favor the GOP, as MBS calculates that a Republican president will reinvest in the idea of dominating the Middle East militarily." Not a bad bet to make there. Which makes the relationship with Saudi Arabia critical once more. Okay, so understand the entire dynamic of what is going on here. Even though Democrats, especially the Democratic establishment, especially somebody like Joe Biden, who is trying to shove through a $650 million arms sale to Saudi Arabia as they are continuing widespread catastrophic human rights abuses towards Yemeni people, even that action, okay, by Democrats and the Democratic establishment and Joe Biden, even being that lenient with selling weapons to human rights abusers, that's not good enough for MBS, okay? He wants more. He wants a GOP president. He wants a Republican president like Trump, who will deny the fact that he, slaughters American-affiliated journalists like Jamal Khashoggi. Okay, he wants somebody who will unceasingly and unquestionably support Saudi Arabia in everything that they do and give them unlimited access, basically, to weapons to conduct offensive operations as well. Even though, again, Joe Biden is not really making a true distinction there. Okay, so again, they're basically trying to hold the Joe Biden administration hostage politically, in a sense, because whether or not it's Joe Biden's fault in this situation that this oil cartel from Saudi Arabia and the UAE, whether or not it's necessarily his fault that they are deciding to restrict the faucet basically and turn down the amount that they are willing to let out there into the market that could potentially suppress some of these pricing issues. It just doesn't matter at the end of the day. Okay, Biden is stuck politically in the sense that rising gas prices are going to be blamed on him, even if it's not necessarily his fault, and he's doing somewhat of the right thing. But at the same time, he's not even going full pressure mode, right? He's not even putting the full weight that he could on Saudi Arabia and on MBS, because he's simultaneously giving them weapons under the table. So he's doing this strategy where he's trying to play both sides of this, and it's not working. Okay, Trump's strategy, at least he was open and honest, although he was vehemently wrong in what he was doing, and the consequences of his actions were going and funneling weapons towards somebody who was committing war crimes with them, right? So what Trump was doing was wrong and terrible in every way, way, shape, or form, but at least he was open and honest. I mean, Biden right now is basically pretending as if he is above the fray and above giving weapons to war criminals, basically dictatorial war criminals, and then he's secretly doing it under the table. So he's not even getting the benefit of having the oil cartel on his side politically, while he's also actually just doing the terrible things that he says that he's against. So it's just, he's not handling this way in any way, shape, or form that would resemble something coherent if you were trying to win politically and do the right thing. He's not succeeding in doing that. But on top of that, basically, what are the actual solutions to what he could do if he doesn't want to just full-throatedly support MBS and everything he does? Well, here's one thing that he could do in the short term. Again, not a big fan of oil, okay? I support aggressively transitioning to renewable energy, but here's something he could do in the short term, right, to just get prices under control. So Biden may tap strategic reserve amid rising fuel prices, Granholm says, and the president is all over this, of course. Every president is frustrated because they can't control the price of gasoline. Well, you could somewhat if you opened up the spigot here domestically in the United States and you started releasing some of our own strategic reserves. Okay, that's something Biden could be doing in the short term. In the long term, again, we should be aggressively transitioning away from fossil fuels and towards renewable energy, and also building out our public transportation infrastructure so that at a more ground level, we don't have everybody reliant on gas stations and cars and highways and pumps and other fossil fuel heavy industry in order to make our economy function. Okay, we should be going towards much more fuel efficient and cost efficient ways of transporting people, which is, you know, things like trains and buses and other things like that that are public transportation, and also, again, aggressively transitioning towards things like solar, nuclear, wind, etc., renewable energies that we are able to produce at a mass scale. But unfortunately, that's not what Biden is doing either. So again, shooting himself in the foot by not even doing the bare minimum, because this bipartisan infrastructure bill that just passed through, which should be doing the things that I just described, actually over 6 times as much money is being dedicated towards going backwards on the climate fight than going forwards, not only wiping out whatever progress is being made by the $79 billion they're investing towards climate initiatives, but sending us even further in the opposite direction. So listen, Biden, from top to bottom on this entire issue, is doing everything wrong. He's doing everything wrong. He's secretly selling weapons to Saudi Arabia while claiming that they're not for offensive operations when we all know damn well that they are. Okay, so he's not even morally sticking to his position that he had. Politically, he's getting absolutely dicked and rolled over by a murderous dictator from across the world and an oil cartel who are just shoving him around at every turn. And then on top of that, he's not tapping our strategic reserves in the short term to lower prices and help himself out politically. And on top of that, in the long-term way, he's not addressing the problem because he's not aggressively transitioning from fossil fuels and towards renewable energy and investing adequately in public infrastructure. So it's just a complete disaster and a mishandling logistically from top to bottom from the Biden administration.